Okay, today we're going to be doing period hair, but I also wanted to go over the tools that you're going to need to keep your hair in place. This is an amazing hairpin. You can get it from Sally's Beauty Supply and most major cosmetology supply stores online at Amazon. This is a hairpin. This is a bobby pin. Big difference, and I'll explain later. Smaller versions, hairpin, bobby pin, hair comb, giant hair tie, little tiny hair ties. These come in a huge variety of colors. Your comb, your brush, and what I call glue. Mousse, hairspray, gel. They used other things in period to keep their hair in place: tar, honey, sugar water, resin, wax. Please go buy the mundane professional versions of this. Don't use that actual stuff in your hair. You'll have things inhabiting your hair. Huh, super fun. Not. Okay. I'm going to show you basic braiding and twisting, and then we'll get on to some period hairstyles. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. This is Barbie. We're only going to be working with one half of her hair, so I've actually taken the other half and braided it and tied it up. Control of what you're doing is also super important. Don't try to do, especially if really long and wavy hair, don't try to do your hair with all of it down at once. Do one section at a time. If you'll notice, it's what hairdressers do when you go. It's because it makes your life easier, so you should totally do that. So first I'm going to show you the difference between a French braid and a cornrow or a Dutch braid. Basically, one goes in, one lays out on top, just so people know. But first, basic braiding. And I know a lot of you already know this, but we're going to cover it because the pattern repeats over and over and over again in hairstyling. You separate your hair into 3 chunks. Hopefully even, makes your life easier, makes your braid prettier. So I've got a middle chunk, I've got a front chunk, a middle chunk, and a back chunk. And all you're going to do is switch with the middle chunk and create a new middle chunk. So the front one goes into the middle, and now I have a new front chunk and a new middle chunk. The back one switches with the middle. Now I have a new back chunk, a new middle chunk, and the front chunk switches with the middle, back chunk switches with the new middle, front chunk switches with the new middle, back chunk, right? So hopefully you get that. Okay, so that's a basic braid. And here's where the pattern repeats itself. For a French braid, and I'm going to do these in large sections so that it's faster and a little easier, hopefully, to see. Same thing, you're going to separate this front section into 3 chunks. Now we're going to call them top, middle, and bottom. So I have a bottom, I have a middle, and I have a top. So in this case, the bottom is now going to switch with the middle to become the middle. But before I do anything else, I'm going to add some hair to the new bottom part. Okay? So now I have bottom part with hair, middle part, top part. I'm going to switch the top part with the middle. So now I have a new top part. And before I do anything else, I'm going to add some top hair to the top part. So I'm going to switch the bottom part. And before I switch anything else, I'm going to add some hair to the new bottom part. I'm going to switch the new top part with the middle. Before we go on, add, switch. Before you do anything else, add. What I'm discovering when people try to French braid, what they're doing is they're twisting, they're switching too soon, and then they get chunks missing from their French braid, and it's very frustrating. So you just have to remember, switch once, add hair. So switch once, add hair, and then ignore that for a minute. Switch once, add hair, switch once, add hair. So that's the basic French braid, and that's what you see everywhere. Everybody does it or gets it done. I learned how to do these on myself. That's one of the biggest complaints I get from people, by practicing, practice. And what I discovered, being dyslexic, that I actually learned the cornrow first, and here's what the cornrow looks like. You take the same thing, you're going to take the 3 sections of hair, only this time, instead of going over the middle, you're going to go under the middle. So I have a new top, I'm going to add hair to it, right? I'm going to switch with the bottom, but the bottom is going to go under the middle. I'm going to add hair to it. So it's almost exactly the same thing, except you're going over instead of under. This one can be harder for people because of the hand placement, but honestly, for me, it's easier. And if you're gonna wear a wig or pin things to your hair, this you can really get some tension on. Because you're doing it under, you're really anchoring that hair down. And then this is, as you can see, gives you that pretty braid that lays on top. There are lots of combinations of this where people do 4 parts and 5 parts and 6 parts and 8 parts, and it gets ridiculous. For period and for what we're doing for the most part, don't worry about it. All of those pretty braids you see at Ren Fair and stuff, not really period for what we do. Fun to wear, but not super period for what we do. Twisting. So in this case, I take the front section of hair and I twist it pretty good, so it's pretty tight. And then all I'm going to do is add from the underside. So this is a 2-part twist. So I'm going to switch the 2 pieces, and I'm going to add to the under piece, and then switch them, and add to the under piece, and then switch them, and then add to the under piece, and then switch them. And then when I get down to the bottom, so I now have, here's the math part, I now have 2 pieces of hair and a 3rd one, and this is where I just add the 3rd one in and braid it. And then once you put a tie on that, that'll hold it. The other thing you can do is, if you wanted to keep adding to it, you can go all the way around and add to it. And then in this case, what you would want to do is take a pin and pin it, and then figure out what you're going to do with the rest of this. I like braiding it. It's easier for me. It's not easier for some people. Your choice. Practice. And then a solid twist is the same sort of thing. You're going to twist, 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 twist. Only this time, I'm just going to keep twisting while I'm adding hair, and you get more of that solid twist. And again, you can braid it in, so once you get to here, separate it. I've separated it in 2, and then just add your 3rd piece that you haven't added into the twist and braid it. And that gives you your solid twist. So those are mostly what we're going to be using to anchoring things in place. I'm going to now walk you through how to use the pins, and for that, I'm going to argue with Barbie for a minute, and we're going to go to the other side of her head. Now again, because I don't want this in my way, we're just going to kind of quickly do a really sloppy braid and put a thing in it. Okay. So the difference between using a bobby pin and a hairpin, the bobby pin puts your hair where, holds it in place. And the hairpin puts it where you want it. And I know I get a lot of people that are like, what? Here's the trick with the bobby pin. See where my finger is? That's the pressure point on my hair. So I'm going to go in right where my finger is and put that pin in so that it holds it. But now I wanted to kind of open this braid up and lay it flat. This is where your hairpin comes in. And this is how you put a hairpin in the hair. I'm going to take this chunk of hair, put the hairpin in the opposite direction I want it to go in, flip it, and anchor it. Ta-da! Same thing for combs. I know a lot of people have a really hard time with hair combs. We're going to undo this side of Barbie. So when I do combs in things, again, comb opposite direction of where I want it, come in, grab the hair, twist it, and push it in place. Ta-da! And that's how that works. They did use hair combs. The Egyptians were the first one to use hair combs, and then they've been found throughout history. They're usually much longer tangs, and there's fewer of them. They usually were in sets of 3s or 4s, sometimes 2s, which is where people get hairpins and combs confused. So, yeah. And now I'm going to do some basic period hairstyling. So in this case, I'm actually going to split her hair again on this side. So this is one that I get asked a lot about. See, it wants to argue with me. For the people that do truly medieval hair as opposed to Viking hair or later period hair. Later period hair is a bit advanced for what we're doing, so we'll talk about that in another session, hopefully. Let me make sure I'm still in the shot. Am I still in the shot? Oh, yeah. Hey, look. Well, not me, but Barbie's still in the shot. So for this one, we're going to do the loops that would stick out of your veil or your headdress. 11th century to 13th century did this a lot. So you can do a really standard braid. And a lot of you are going, well, duh. Yeah, I know how to do this already. Okay, but here's my trick to it. So, standard braid, most of you will take the braid and pin it up here. And if you look at her face, that does that. What you actually want to do is take the braid and pin it up here, because then when you put your headdress on, the braid sticks out. And I usually tuck that end in, and with a bobby pin, get it going. Ugh. Anchor it in when it's not twisty. Okay. So that's one way to do it. But what I find from people is that this slides, especially if you have lovely, straight, nice, silky, period, non-period hair, because we spend thousands of dollars a year on making our hair look fabulous. They didn't in period. So what I suggest to people they do is take the Dutch braid or French braid, whichever one's easier for you that I taught you, and do it down the hair. And I do the Dutch braid, and I'll show you why when I get it done. Again, this is the one where it goes under. So you're adding to the new outside pieces and switching underneath the new middle piece, and the middle piece becomes new every time you switch it. And, you know, one of the fun things about the SCA is you get to, you know, play with all of this stuff, which, you know, mundanely, the hair's not that interesting anymore. It used to be that we did our hair up every time we went to dinner, and, you know, now we just don't do that anymore. So as you can see, you still continue the under all the way down. And the speed and stuff comes with 53 years of doing hair, my own, and then 29 professionally. Holy crap, 29 years. So I'm going to tie this off with one of these clear rubber bands. And I like the clear rubber bands because they just don't show as well. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bottom, and I'm not going to pull it all the way through the rubber band, because that's going to help me get rid of some of that extra hair. And in this case, I'm going to kind of tuck that up under that braid. I'm going to use a smaller bobby pin. I'm going to go into the main braid and then up it just a little bit. And I don't like that piece of hair there. So using my hairpin, we're going to hopefully nicely get it out of the way. Maybe not, because, you know, mornings. All right. So now, if you wanted to actually wear your hairpiece back here, or just wear a little cap, you have a really sweet little braid right there. I would do this on the other side, and then take the hair from the back, and either do a long braid that hangs down if your hair is long enough, or do a bun in the back that would fit under your cap, and kind of fills out the back of the cap nicely for the later period stuff. But that's just kind of a super fun way of doing that. The Italians would do little tiny braids that came down around the head for the Italian Renaissance. And we'll do that next. First, I have to find my bobby pin and get it out of her hair. So for the Italian, even her hair isn't long enough to do the full Italian braid that went all the way down the back. But you also have to remember that most of them had the hair tubes in them. And so what they would do is they would find animal hair or human hair that matched closely to their hair color. And they would braid their hair in back and then secure the tube to the top of the braid, fill it with roving or sometimes straw or something to make it look like it was a braid in there, and then stick the bottom of the real hair braid out the end of it, and that gave them very long hair. This was just after a very serious plague and sickness in Europe, so women were basically advertising that they could indeed have children. They could be pregnant, which is why they looked pregnant in the Italian Renaissance clothing, because you didn't want... Oh, Barbie's going to be a pain in the butt today. You didn't, you wanted to advertise that if you were an unmarried woman or girl. So for the Italian hair, this would have all been brought back and put in a braid, and this little guy would have just been braided. For one of the styles. They also wore little ribbons around their head, and the ribbons were usually brought back so that you could anchor that tube to it. So that would have been brought back, and all of this would have been basically to anchor the tube to it. So, yay, fun. Okay, I'm going to take a little break for a minute, and then I'll come back and show you some Viking stuff. Okay, so one of the more famous Viking burial finds is the Ealing braid. And I'll stick it on the Facebook group as to what it's called, but I think I actually have a picture or example of it up. And it's a French braid that has a bunch of multiple braids going on. And I'm not so sure that that wasn't, sorry, it's a Dutch braid, not a French braid. I'm not so sure that that wasn't some sort of ceremonial hair. This is what happens when your hands aren't positioned right. Alright, let's try that again. Because my brain said French braid, so my hands started to do French braid stuff. And I'm sorry if you can't see this too well. It's kind of hard to do with a stationary phone. But with the pandemic scare going on, I don't have assistance. So it's a really big French braid, or Dutch braid. Ugh, see, here I go again. That encompasses all of the hair down to the nape of the neck. And then from here, it gets separated out into 3 braids. So each one of these sections then becomes its own braid. And here's where I haven't really gotten into too much of the reading on this, and they don't really cover it as much as like, oh, this is her hair, which, of course, for reenactors is awesome. Not. But in this case, I'm going to use these heavy-duty pins. Because I need to secure this one better than I did, because I'm now going to need to braid all of these into their own braids, and in this case it doesn't matter whether you do Dutch or French or whatever. Now, in the case of the actual burial find, she also had 2 sets of longer braids of her own hair. Barbie's trying to kill me. Barbie's trying to kill me. That then came out and wrapped around these. Barbie doesn't actually have enough hair to do that. So we're just going to pretend that that's what's going on now. It's make-believe. Sure it is. And if I were doing this, you know, of course, on a real person, it would look better, I hope. And you know, be cleaner and tidier. And I would probably get them to hold their braid sections, which is probably what happened for this. Was the person either had an assistant because it was hair that they did for her burial, or they or she was alive when they did the braid, which I highly doubt, but could have happened. And then they braided that together along with the other braids, and it created this giant junction of braids. And then you can pull these pins out, and this goes here, and you have a very short, simple version of the Ealing braid. Kind of fun. The Vikings in the finish did all sorts of things where they would grab all the hair to kind of a side ponytail, think 80s, but then do it in a braid and either wrap it around in a bun or fold it down and pin it. I don't know why. You know, we find bog finds and we find burials, and it's kind of a mystery as to why they did what and how they did it. And sometimes it's ceremonial hair, like in the case of the Egyptians. We know that, you know, they were buried in their best wigs type of thing. Sometimes, you know, it was the woman was working at the time, and maybe that's just how she figured out how to get the hair out of her face while she was doing something, and then she died or was killed and dumped in a you know, spot, and that's what we came up with later. So yay, fun. So those are some of the basics about period hair. So you can play with that. I have pictures and stuff of the Viking hair and how I did that for the Viking bun. But basically, I do a lot of French braids down the hair. And then I take one whole section of them and wrap them up in the bun around the other braids, and they come out, which I can do for you guys. So let me know if you guys want to see that. But for now, I'm going to post this so that you have a basic understanding of how this works, and then I'll do some hair pieces tomorrow. Okay, bye.